Yo, what's up, guys? It's James. Welcome back to another episode of The Starters. Today, guys, I'm bringing you my mock draft 1.0 post-combine. And today, I am joined with my good friend, Clark. Clark does great work with his podcast, Going Commando, with our friend also, Tom Wilmar. And he also is a Butler alum and currently works for Lehigh University. So, Clark, how are you doing today?
Couldn't be better, man. You said it. Going Commando, for those that couldn't connect the dots, it is a Washington Commanders podcast. You might be able to see, or not this side. On this side of me, picture of FedEx Field hanging in my apartment. So I'm a diehard Washington Commanders fan. So I'm pumped for this draft. And excited to see where everybody ends up falling.
And guys, because he is a Washington Commanders fan, I'm going to be giving him the even picks. So he's going to be picking for the Washington Commanders. I'm going to be picking for the odd picks. So I'm going 1, and then he's going to go 2, and then so on. As you can see, you guys already know I'm a Vikings fan. So we are going to do trades. So you'll have to see it how I have us trading up, I guess, to try to get a quarterback. Or Clark could predict us to trade up. But without further ado, I guess we can go and get started with the first pick.
Let's do it. So, this is you. What are you thinking here? You thinking Bears are gonna play chalk here?
The Bears obviously have traded Justin Fields. They've went to his pro day. Caleb Williams, in my opinion, is probably one of the most refined prospects in the last 10 years since Andrew Luck. He's great in the pocket, in structure. He's great out of structure. A lot of guys try to give him a knack or try to knock his game, saying that he can't play in structure. I actually did go look at that USC offensive line. Also, I want you to look at his weapons that he had to work with. I think his best weapon was probably Brendan Rice, who's not even probably going to go top 100 in this draft. So he was in a really tough situation, offensively, and then on top of that, they didn't even have a top 100 defense for USC. So with all that, Caleb Williams basically had to play hero ball. So, but I think in a good system with the Bears and with good offensive production around him, I think he can play great in structure. So that's why I'm going with the money slam dunk of a pick of Caleb Williams for sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a debate, unfortunately, as much as I wish there would be as a fan of the team with the next pick. And, of course, Caleb Williams being a guy from the DMV area, it seems set in stone, almost too good to be true that we would, have a prospect of his talent level from our area.
Just the Washington look.
Exactly. So, there's a part of me there that hoped maybe we could, maybe trade, but at the same time, the situation we're in, I don't know that giving up all of our draft picks is necessarily what we want to do. But I would agree. Caleb Williams he's a special talent. I mean, it's very evident just watching him. His Heisman season, he did have better weapons as well. Jordan Addison was there, got drafted by your Vikings. And this season, it's true. The talent really wasn't there. The team wasn't as great around him. And I think that, some things he may have said a wrong thing here too down the way, but I think he's kind of learned from this season. I think, he took his lumps a little bit, had a real high expectations after that Heisman season. I think taking his lumps a little bit perhaps is going to humble him and, prepare him to step into a situation in the NFL. And I do think that Chicago's actually done a very good job of getting ready for him.
Yep. And just to add one more thing, I've also been in quarterback camps with Caleb Williams. You mentioned he's from our area. So I've gotten a chance to talk to him here and there, know people who've talked to him here and there. So I really think he's a great character guy. I think a lot of the character issues things are just nitpicky stuff because he's such a great prospect. People are like, oh, he has to have something wrong with him. I disagree. I think he's as perfect of a prospect that you can get.
Yeah, and it is a shame that I guess that would take us to our next pick, that being, of course, the Washington Commanders, which I will do the honors here. As much as I would have loved to take, that quarterback at number 1, unfortunately, he's off the board now in our situation. So it's definitely clear that a quarterback is going to be what this team is targeting. And which one they actually end up going with, who's to say? I can tell you that whoever we do draft, I'm going to be all in on. I'm not going to have a choice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be all in on this quarterback. But if I had to take a guess of what we would do with this draft pick, you take a look at how this offseason has gone. We did sign another quarterback, that being Marcus Mariota, a veteran guy, former number 2 draft pick himself. And for that reason, I think that is going to tell me that we are going to be taking from LSU the reigning Heisman winner, Jayden Daniels, at the number 2 overall selection. Jayden Daniels, of course, a guy, unbelievable playmaking ability. You saw it this year, all year. Albeit he wasn't maybe on one of these elite teams, although he still went, what was it, 9-3 in the SEC, 9-4 in the SEC, still pretty, one of the toughest, conferences in all of college football. And obviously a Heisman Trophy to that as well. I do see some concerns with his stature. He's a guy that has taken a lot of hits, and with his play style and our track record of having an offensive line the last few years really hasn't been there. But just because of the backup quarterback we signed, and, we know that this team's going to be taking a quarterback, I think that the logical pick there would be Jayden Daniels with what I think our team is trying to build. However, I have seen some interesting rumors, going for Drake May. I even saw something today that they might be interested in JJ McCarthy from Michigan. So I'm really not sure but based off what I've seen so far, my gut would say that the Commanders are going to take Daniels at number 2.
I will like to talk about Drake May here, because I know in our conversations prior that you kind of brought up the Sam Howell comparison. I don't know if that's Scout in the helmet, but can you explain how you believe that he may be comparable to Sam Howell?
Well, clearly the UNC connection is there. Obviously, they're very good friends. They know each other well. But really, what scares me, there are different quarterbacks. Sam Howell's a bit smaller. He's more of a scrambler type. He's not going to wow you with his arm strength. Although at one point in time he was receiving pretty high acclaim on draft boards after his junior year, before his senior season. But then with Drake May, this is a song and dance we've seen a couple times now with UNC quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky was drafted by the Bears. That didn't work out. Sam Howell was looking to be a high prospect. He ends up falling to the 5th round to us. And, the jury's still out on him, but obviously his future wasn't going to be with Washington. And then Drake May, everything tells you that he could be a fantastic prospect with his size, his skill. People compare him to a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen type of quarterback. But the one thing that I had about it was how much of a reflection UNC putting out these quarterback prospects, is that a reflection on those guys' talent? Or is it more so that Mac Brown's offenses, which he's a coach that's been at it for a while, he's able to kind of get these quarterbacks looking very good for his team. So that's the one thing that I would question. Another UNC quarterback prospect is this one. What makes this particular one stand out amongst the ones we've seen in recent years?
You've seen guys like CJ Stroud. He had the Ohio State label on him. But overall he's withstanded that, and also the number 2 pick label on him. A lot of guys like to say that the number 2 pick is like a cursed pick, or Ohio State quarterbacks usually don't work out in the NFL because they're set up so well, and they have the perfect line. They have all the weapons. So I just think Drake May, he was in a really bad, similar to Caleb Williams, he was in a really bad situation as well. He didn't really have a great offensive coordinator. He didn't have a great offensive line. He kind of was left for dead almost. And then Josh Downs, his number 1 receiver, left for the NFL draft this past season. So it kind of hindered him a little bit from passing standpoint. But to move on to the 3rd pick now, this is kind of where the draft, you can say, kind of starts, if not the 2nd pick. A lot of people, I think, are picking Drake May to go 2nd. A lot of people are saying that Drake May is the second best quarterback. I believe that he's the second best quarterback, but according to this mock now, we had Jaden Daniels go second. Here, I believe that the Patriots could either look to trade down or take what I think is a generational wide receiver prospect and Marvin Harrison, which I'm going to have them take. And the reason why I'm going to take Marvin Harrison over the beloved Drake May that I really love so much is because I think for a rookie quarterback to come into that organization and to not have any weapons and to also have a bad O-line, they're really struggling. Even Cole Strange struggled with injury, their previous first round pick. Just for that quarterback to try to come in there, learn the system, learn how to be a pro, and then have to struggle and be the guy that early, I think is unreasonable. So I think you try to like build the house around a quarterback and then substitute later down the line, get that franchise guy. Right now, I mean, you have a decent quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, a guy who can come in, win some games, be really reliable at times. You know, you saw him with the Colts, you saw him with the Browns come in, win a few games. So I think he's going to be pretty decent in the offense. They just need a real like weapon. I think that's what they're lacking right now. And Marvin Harrison last year with 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, and the Biletnikoff winner, which is kind of, it was controversial because a lot of people thought that Malik Neighbors should have won it. But I think Marvin Harrison is literally a stud. Garrett Wilson were my two favorite Ohio State wide receiver prospects from that entire team. They have a great program there, especially their wide receiver coach. Used to play with the Dolphins. He's really good. And then, like I said, just building the house, I think is really important. Even in the second round, they can look to get more offensive line help. They've got their defense right now, but just making sure that you build an environment where a young quarterback, even if it's not going to be eventually a third or second overall pick, just a guy later rounds or just a guy that from free agency that can come in, a young guy, and just grow within the organization. I think that is the path that you want to go instead of trying to just throw a young quarterback into the wild, basically.
Yeah, and I do like that because you got to remember also this is going to be the first year pretty much ever. I mean, not actually, but in a very, very long time where there's no Bill Belichick input into this draft in New England. And Bill Belichick was always, well, one, they were never drafting this high with Bill Belichick. And number two, you always looked at these picks. You mentioned Cole Strange. He was a division, I want to say D3 player that he found somewhere.
Yeah, from Chattanooga.
Or an FC. He was an FCS player that he found from Chattanooga. And there hasn't really been these big flashy kind of picks for them. Marvin Harrison would be exactly that flashy kind of pick. And with a new regime bringing in a star level player like that, maybe not necessarily addressing the quarterback position right away, could be beneficial for him for sure.
Yep. All right, so you're up now with the fourth pick in the Arizona Cardinals. They have elected to, stick and rock with Kyler Murray. A lot of guys before the season thought that maybe they may be in the Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison sweepstakes, but they find themselves at 4. I'm pretty sure they're really mad that they couldn't get Marvin in the fall to them. What do you have them doing?
Yeah, I was going to pencil in Marvin Harrison here for this selection. But, as a result of that kind of not happening, I think we're going to have to pivot. They do need a wide receiver. They no longer have Hollywood Brown. I think this could be a prime spot for Malik Neighbors out of LSU to come off the draft.
Malik Neighbors at 4.
Malik Neighbors. And that is 2 wide receivers back to back. However, you just look at what this team needs. And if they really are truly committed to Kyler Murray being their quarterback of the future, they need to surround him with weapons. And the newest toy from LSU should do the trick. It seems that this school is pumping out, high quality NFL wide receivers year after year. And Malik Neighbors proved every bit is why he's worthy of being a top pick in this draft this past season. So, right there on the clock. Now this isn't to say I know we were saying trades. I definitely think this could be a prime trade team. However, the Arizona Cardinals, given the fact that they are sold on their quarterback right now, they kind of started playing well at stretches this past season, despite their roster not being great. So I wouldn't be shocked to see this team trade down, but I am going to pencil them in, selecting Neighbors.
All right. And that still leaves Drake May on the board. Now, we did mention that, you know, certain team was looking to trade up. I may or may not be a fan of that certain team, but unbiasedly, I just think overall they're trying to come and get their guy after losing Kirk Cousins. Talking about the Minnesota Vikings, they even traded with the Texans a couple weeks ago to try to get back into the first round, just to get the ammunition to trade back up and try to get a franchise quarterback. Because right now you're just rocking Sam Darnold, and you kind of have this beautifully built house that I was talking about the Patriots should do with Justin Jefferson, Addison, TJ Hawkinson when he comes back, and then 2 all-pro tackles, Darishaw and Brian O'Neill, who are both very young, and then a decent O-line. Could work on the interior, but overall, just a great environment and a great coach to help mold this quarterback that they're going to want to trade up for, especially Kevin O'Connell. You can argue the reason why they moved off of Zimmer and to get Kevin O'Connell not only was to help Kirk Cousins and the fit, but it was also to, when they try to find their next guy, they wanted a quarterback whisperer. So with that being said, I just voiced my opinion on why the Vikings are trying to trade up, but let me voice my opinion on why I think the Chargers should trade down and not take, a Joe Aroma Dunze or Brock Bowers. Just overall, I don't think right now they're going to try to get a weapon. Jim Harbaugh likes to win a certain way, and that is the ground and pound and running the ball and defense. And I think right now they're just trying to get tougher. And they're also in a period where, they just got rid of Keenan Allen. They just restructured Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. They're trying to, cut costs a lot and just try to get a lot of assets back and a lot of value back. So I think a trade down with the Vikings would really help the Chargers do that. A lot of teams don't really like to help other teams out unless they're really getting a real incentive to do that. So the Chargers now are going to trade down and get 2 first-round picks plus another one next year. That is what I have the mock trade being right now. I think that's pretty reasonable just for see if this was JJ McCarthy, I think you take out next year's first and just do the 11 and 23. But because it's Drake May, such a great prospect, I think it's well worth the extra first to throw in there. Possibly even, another 7th or whatever pick swap, but this is like the real trade here. All right, so let's just act
down. We'll mark it down.
Yeah, let's just act like number 5 is the Vikings right now, and 11 and 23 are the Chargers. We'll just mark that down. So right now, the Vikings have traded up. Everyone thinks they're selecting quarterback. They will be selecting quarterback, and I think the perfect match made in heaven for this Minnesota Vikings offense with Kevin O'Connell, quarterback coach with Josh McCown, who coached Drake May in high school. You got a beautiful receiving core, like I said, with tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, all around. I love Drake May here at 5 for the Minnesota Vikings.
And I don't blame you at all. I mean, losing your quarterback in Kirk Cousins, coming from a fan of a team that's had the Kirk Cousins experience as well. I mean, he's going to win you some games, but ultimately, he's
on a plateau.
He's not going to get you where you really want to go as a team. And certainly a guy like May, plenty of upside. He has all the potential in the world to be an elite, kind of level quarterback. So I do think it makes sense. I've seen a lot of mock drafts with the Vikings trading into the top 5. So you absolutely have a case right there.
Yep. So now with the Vikings making the shocking trade up, and getting their quarterback of the future, Drake May. You are now on the clock, Clark. So who do you like the Giants to take at number 6?
So the New York Giants, right? They're not going to be taking a quarterback, although some could argue that they should be in the market for a quarterback. But, they do have Mr. Daniel Dimes locked up for several more years, which as a fan of a rival team, I'm okay with that, although they seem to beat us a lot of the time. But nonetheless, a big issue with this team, and I think it's part of the reason why you see a Saquon Barkley leave in free agency. They tried to address the offensive line at times, but some of the guys, that they've picked haven't necessarily panned out. So I think that with this pick that they're going to try again. They could use some help up front, but I actually don't have them taking Joe Alt, who is going to be on the number one on many people's, top boards. I do have them, and apologies on the pronunciation here. This is the offensive tackle from Penn State.
Olu
Fashanu. He's got, first of all, he's also from kind of the greater Lehigh Valley area, somewhat into, New Jersey, New York area. So it's kind of like Saquon was as well. He's got a guy with some more local roots. And as a result, I think that he's kind of what they're looking for. They need to get better up front. They need to protect Daniel Jones. They also need to be able to run the ball, which when you have one of the best running backs in the league and you still have trouble doing that, I think that's a reflection of the guys up front. So I have them picking Olu from Penn State.
I kind of almost stole a pick from me later on. He played with the guy that's in this draft in high school named Caleb Williams. So, yeah, but I think that's a great pick. A lot of guys or Giants fans may want them to go quarterback, because they may not be as high on Daniel Jones, but securing the protection. They also have Evan Neal, so just trying to get that extra protection and try to help Daniel Jones succeed. And what was last year's struggling season ended by injury. So, yep, just securing the protection. I like it. So I'm back on the clock with pick number 7, and this kind of makes my job pretty easy because my left tackle 1 is still on the board. You got Joe Alt. His dad played in the NFL. He comes from a great, strong family. And also he comes from Notre Dame. Notre Dame produces a ton of great tackle prospects. Yes, it's slightly scouting the helmet, but overall, like Joe Alt, if you just turn on the tape, like it's very sexy if you're just looking at tackle prospects. So he reminds me a lot of actually Rashawn Slater if he was stronger and had like more dog in him. Yeah. So I think, the Titans have been missing that franchise left tackle ever since Taylor Lewan has departed from the franchise, unfortunately. But I think right now they just go Joe Alt. This is kind of like a real slam dunk late in the first top 10. So late in the top 10, you go Joe Alt. Now you're back on the board at pick 8 for the Falcons with newly acquired Kirk O'Chains. What are you doing here?
Kirk O'Chains, of course, in the building. And yeah, I will correct myself there. Olu is from the DMV. I was getting him confused a little bit with the whole Penn State thing there. So yeah, again, another DMV prospect high in the draft. But, I take a look at this Atlanta team and, after signing Kirk Cousins, they finally seemingly have a quarterback in place. But I look at this team, you've got a lot of great weapons offensively, and up to this point, we have gone through the first 7 picks without a defensive player off the board. And so, what I think they do here is I think they look to, get faster on the defensive line. I think that it's ever so important in this league to have the ability to rush the passer with how often teams are passing these days. And you look at the sack totals that some of these top guys are getting up. Having an elite edge rusher is critical. So I think that they are going to select Dallas Turner from Alabama at this pick. Just a great prospect. Again, we had Will Anderson last season. I think that they go Dallas Turner here. You have now a defensive-minded coach in the building. So I think that after all of these, picks, they've got, Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Robinson all in the first round in recent years. I think they go defense, and I think they go with Turner.
Nice. I love it. Dallas Turner is actually my number one edge rusher in this class, as well as my number one defensive player in this class as well. So I love them after, years of trying to beef up the offense with just weapons, with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and then getting their final franchise quarterback for the time being, Kirk Cousins. Now they're trying to flip it back on the other side and beef up the defensive end. So I love it. So I'm back up on the clock with the Chicago Bears. And you can argue that they could low-key just trade down. I mean, just keep accumulating assets because you can argue in years after today, I mean, they may be later in this draft and around the 20s. So, but right now I'm going to stay. And there's a certain guy I really like. I could go tight end, but I feel like Cole Kmet kind of had a breakout season last year. So I'm going to get him another weapon. And I'm going to go Rome Odunze. And this is just a superstar receiving core now with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, now Rome. And, Keenan Allen's getting up there in years, so he's going to probably have 1 to 2 more years left of being really elite. And then he might fall off a little bit. But Rome, he's got everything you want in the wide receiver. You saw today it came out that he's the first receiver prospect with a full green route tree grade, where every single route was above 90 point score per PFF. So he's great just route running. And of course, his specialty is the jump ball. He's a big receiver. He played with Michael Penix. He was in a great offense. And I think he's great after the catch. He's not a really small receiver, and he's pretty fast. I believe he ran a 4.4. Don't quote me on that, but he's a pretty fast receiver as well. He's not slow, and he's not stiff. So he has everything you want in the receiver. He may not be the tier of receiver that Marvin Harrison is, but he's arguably 2 to 3 around there, just interchangeable with Malik Neighbors. So I really like Rome Odunze here to the Bears as a great weapon, another weapon for Caleb Williams. Now, Clark, you are back on the clock with the Jets, who had a really, really underwhelming season with the injury of many guys, not even just Aaron Rodgers, just many O-line injuries, and then just poor coaching, not really having any backup plans. So what is your idea of the Jets, and what do you think they might do at number 10?
This team, my initial thought was they need to get the offensive line help fast, which they addressed in free agency, bringing in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. So I was wanting to pencil them in for an offensive tackle for that reason, but because of those signings, I don't know that they ultimately do now. Top 3 receivers off the board. That's something else many were saying they could be interested in.
You want me to throw a real wild card at you? So we know that Aaron Rodgers is getting up there in age. Would you entertain them drafting their quarterback of the future to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a year or two and get to learn behind one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it? And draft JJ McCarthy here, or would you go elsewhere? Just like, go
I
edge rusher
was I
or
was
Terrion Hines.
thinking about that. Um, Certainly would be interesting, and I think if there was a guy that they would pick to kind of do that and let sit, it probably would be McCarthy. At this point, he's
Mhm.
probably the guy that, you know, he's proven to be a winner, but how much of the raw talent is really there, is the question, certainly. Um, but ultimately, some of those signings that they made, they're both older guys. So I actually do
Mhm.
still, I'm going to think that they're going to take an offensive lineman, and that offensive lineman I have them selecting is Talis Fuaga of Oregon State.
I love it. I have him as my tackle 3. I was thinking about drafting with the Bears, but because it wasn't Joe or Olu, I feel like, Rome still being on the board and his caliber of prospect that he is, I just thought he was a tier above Talise Fuaga. But I still love the pick, uh, Talise. Now, would he play left tackle for you, or like guard, or what's your plan for, you think, for the
So
Jets?
they signed a right tackle in Morgan Moses and a left tackle in Tyron Smith. Those guys are going to be at your tackle spots. Um, Fuaga, um, he is a 6'6", 324-pound individual.
Mm-hmm.
I think often what some of these guys, you could play him at guard to start off his career. He can learn from these bigger guys, and stepping into the role of the blindside protector in the NFL is very difficult. And you're going up against some of the best athletes in the world. So I think giving him either the opportunity to sit or giving him the opportunity to get reps as a guard right out of the gate could be beneficial for him. We've seen that work with other guys. And also we've seen it flip the other way as well. Just an
Okay.
example that many might not know about because it's my team, Washington Commanders. No one cares. But we drafted a guy, Sam Cosmi, out of Texas, originally to be an offensive
Oh
tackle.
man,
He has since shifted to guard and really excelled. We've seen that with Eric Flowers as well back in the day. Um,
Brandon Sheriff.
right. And yeah, so being a guy going into a team where you have two kind of tackles there that are proven could work the other way around, be given the experience, trying to protect Aaron Rodgers.
I love it. I love your plan. Even you could have even entertained Jackson Powers Johnson. I know recently his medicals have came up as a question, but like he's such a great prospect at center, so he could fit right in. But or go to guard, he's really interchangeable. So I love the pick of Fuaga. I think he's a great tackle prospect. Now, I know you see it says the Vikings. Well, let's pretend that this is the Chargers because we had uh, the trade up. So the Chargers at pick 11. Jim Harbaugh's coming to this organization, he's stripping everything down. He's trying to build it up his way. And like I said, his way is just tough football. Um, so right now, I believe that the toughest football player and the toughest weapon you could insert into this offense is Brock Bowers. He also just loves a lot of interchangeability and a lot of tight ends who can just move around. He doesn't even just have to have his hand in the dirt. He can play a wide receiver. He can play in the slot. So getting Herbert another weapon. Right now, I think they only have Hayden Hurst on the roster as their starting tight end. So getting another weapon for Herbert to throw to, you got rid of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, trying to get a young guy for him to kind of grow with and try to also build that interior presence. Brock Bowers is a great prospect because not only can he move around and play on the perimeter or just run great routes and pass catch, he's also a great blocker as well. He reminds me a lot of George Kittle in that aspect. So, yeah, I have the Chargers going Brock Bowers at 11. So that brings back Sean Payton and the Broncos at pick 12. Clark, who do you have the Broncos taking?
Yeah, so there's one pick that a lot of people would come to mind. Obviously, this is a team that does need a quarterback. However, I actually don't have them taking the quarterback that many people think that they will. JJ McCarthy is probably the thought here. However, one thing about those teams that had success for Sean Payton in New Orleans. Say what you will about Bounty Gate, but they had a fast defense. They had a hard hitting defense, and I think that's a little bit underrated about this Denver team. This is a team that gave up 70 points in a game last season, so let's not act like they don't need some help on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
So in kind of a weirder one that this guy is coming from, maybe not necessarily a superpower team, but I have them selecting quarterback Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. This is a guy that has gone on a lot of people's draft boards. And I think that if you draft a guy like that, you pair him with Pat Surtain, that has the ability to be one of the best young kind of, secondary duos in the league. So I do think, some are thinking, JJ McCarthy, but I also do think that there's other quarterbacks that Denver might have the ability to draft later on. And I think that they address a position of need and get a cornerback to pair alongside Surtain.
I love it. I think we're thinking about the same quarterback because the quarterback that I think Sean Payton really likes in this draft is Bo Nix. Just because, he wants a mini Drew Brees, a guy who's going to play the point guard position, but as a quarterback. He can play in structure. He can move around a little bit even, but like just run the offense, run a full spread, 5 out, just, get the ball out of his hands quick. He's going to want a guy like Bo Nix. I don't think Sean, he's older in his career, is going to want to take on the aspect of trying to develop a guy like JJ McCarthy. I think he's just going to want a guy who's kind of solid, 25-year-old. I'm pretty sure he's 25, Bo Nix, and try to develop him there. Just try to insert him into the offense. Now, the downside with Bo Nix is what you see is what you're going to get. But what makes him different as a prospect is the rookie quarterback contract is such a great aspect to try to build around when trying to build a Super Bowl team, because it just expands your window. You can spend in so many other places. So with Bo Nix, you're thinking of having that rookie quarterback contract and also trying to have a guy who can just come in and operate the offense, as opposed to a top 3 guy where you're just thinking about the prospect. You're not really thinking about the rookie quarterback contract as well. So, yeah, that's why you may want to go with Bo Nix, especially in the first round, because I think you get the extra year. But I love the pick with Quinion Mitchell as well.
Yeah, and the way you say that, I do think, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, some of these quarterbacks are going to fall. It happens every year. You never know which guy it's going to be. But Denver, clearly a quarterback needy team. But again, as you said, a guy like Bo Nix, they could realistically get in the second round potentially. So yeah. That's why I kind of thought maybe they try to address a position of need at first, then maybe draft someone. However, you got to say, I mean, who even is the quarterback on their roster right now? Jarrett Stidham?
It's Jarrett Stidham, yeah.
You can't assume that that's going to be their opening day starter. But I do think that it's realistic that they could look for a quarterback day 2.
Okay. And that leaves me back on the board with the 13th pick. There's a certain guy who's fell really far that I may or not be picking right now because I'm kind of still deciding. But I just want to say JJ McCarthy this would be a real shock for a lot of people to see him fall to 13. But this is a chalky pick for him to go to 13. But, if I'm really weighing my options and looking at JJ McCarthy, in my own opinion, and comparing him to Bo Nix, who's still on the board, Michael Penix, who's still on the board, I'm going with my guy. And my guy is not a quarterback right now, even though that's a huge need. I get it. But, the Oakland Raiders don't really have an identity. I want to establish an identity, and that is going to be getting after the passer. And that's why I'm going to draft Leatu Latu from UCLA, a great sound rusher of the passer. I think he has a lot of a really deep bag, a lot of moves in his bag. And, he can be on the opposite side of Max Crosby and really give QB's nightmares. And, Dallas Turner may be the really athletic guy, but I think Latu is more of the NFL ready, like just pro ready guy where he's kind of already really technically sound. And I'm pretty sure they're around the same age. So it's not like he's a 5th year, 6th year senior already like pro ready. No, he's like a really refined rusher of the passer to go along with Max Crosby. So yeah, a bit of a curveball to not draft JJ McCarthy. I get it. But that's the reason I want to establish an identity for an identity-less team in the Raiders. So going to pick 14, Clark, you're on the board.
I like that. And yeah, it never is as chalk as you think it's going to be. There's always curveballs. Mm-hmm. And the Raiders, not to say, I like Latu as well, but they are a team that will sometimes draft a player and you'll kind of raise your eyebrow and be like, wait a minute. That guy, they drafted him where? So, that's never a shock to me to see the Raiders kind of find their guy and go for him. New Orleans. Now, again, you want to talk about an identityless team. I feel like the New Orleans Saints also kind of are fitting that bill. They're kind of in no man's land. They've been in cap hell for a long time. They started to kind of change the tide. They finally got rid of Michael Thomas, but they still have a fair amount of the holdovers left from those teams of the Drew Brees and Sean Payton era still kind of hanging around. But again, another thing about this team that they could be looking for is an offensive lineman, particularly a tackle. And with several tackles already off the board in a draft where there's a pretty decently top-heavy amount of tackles, we still see Troy Fautanu of Washington still on the board. And so this is who I think New Orleans is going to select. They're going to want to beef up their offensive line. Derek Carr is under contract for a few more years. They technically had a winning record this year, missed out on the playoffs. I say they elect to get a young offensive tackle to bring in. Fautanu is fitting that bill. So that's where I go. A lot of good players from that Washington team this season, obviously a national finalist.
A lot. And I actually have him on the same tier of prospect as Talise. I think you got the first two with Olu, and then you got the second two. You're getting a really good guy in Fautanu. He has great size. I love the pick, honestly. And then also, like, you talk about tackles. Let's talk about a failed tackle in Trevor Penning, who they really had a lot of high stock in. He was coming out of college. He was a really fiery guy, kind of a headhunter almost, but it didn't really work out. So now they have to really try to swing again with the tackle. But that leads me back to number 15. I'm on the clock with the Colts, and there's a lot of great guys on this board. I just think you need a great athlete, in my opinion. Now, the route that I kind of want to go now is corner, but the question is which corner? Is it Terrion Arnold, who's still on the board, who I thought was going to be taken earlier, or do I go with the guy that I think is a better scheme fit for the Colts right now? And that's the guy I'm going to go with. So it's going to be Cooper DeJean. And the reason why I'm going to go with Cooper DeJean is because I think he's just such a great athlete. Like, you see all the great switchability that he has. He can go to safety. He can go to slot corner. He can go to nickel. He can even be a nickel corner almost. Like the Vikings. I'm blanking on his name. I'm blanking on his name, but he's a great nickel corner for the Vikings. Where's number 44? I forget his name. I'm just blanking on it. But anyway, so I think it's such a great athlete. He can play on the boundary, and he can also return kicks for them. Right now, their defense, they kind of already got their weapons on offense. So I'm liking them just adding to their defensive, the back of their defense. So going to pick 16, you're on the clock, Clark. Who do you have the Seahawks selecting?
Seattle Seahawks, an intriguing pick here for sure for them. They've kind of been, again, at kind of a midpoint the last couple of years, but they do get a new coach. They get Pete Carroll out. They bring in McDonald from the Ravens, who is a defensive-minded guy. And that is what I do think they're going to do with this pick. I think they're going to defense. Okay. With that being said,
also Josh Metellus is the guy I was thinking of. He's a great switchable corner. He even made the Pro, I believe he made the Pro. Don't quote me on that, but like he was just such a great guy for my Vikings this year. So that's what I think Cooper DeJean can be.
So, man, it could be a bit of a reach here. You know what? No. I was going to, I was thinking this team needs an interior linebacker. With Bobby Wagner now out the door as well again, but at the spot they're at, I don't necessarily see them, taking necessarily one of the. It's not really a heavy draft in terms of the talent as for middle linebackers. So for that reason,
it's kind of weak.
For that reason, for that reason, I could see this sort of possibly as a trade destination.
JJ McCarthy's still on the board.
JJ McCarthy is still on the board.
Yeah, he's still on the board. He's fell to 16. So would you like to pencil in a trade? I could put in the notes too.
Just trying to think who would trade. You know what? Let's have some fun here.
Okay.
So you just picked Cooper DeJean, right, for Indianapolis.
Yep.
Gotta write that
over
down.
Terry Arnold, who I had kind of, rated a little bit higher, but yeah.
So we're gonna have fun here, and a team that I had passing on a quarterback earlier was the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
I think that they are, I think this guy's been tied to Denver a little bit. I feel like this is when they come in back into strike. They make this trade with Seattle, and they're going to pick J.J. McCarthy, the Denver Broncos.
The Broncos, not Bo Nix.
The Denver Broncos are trading back into the first round to select J.J. McCarthy. Again, not one of the more polished guys. I think that Sean Payton came back to take this job, and he kind of wants to tool the offense, get all of his own guys in there. And I think that taking a younger quarterback like that could be something that they would like to do. They got their cornerback earlier, but I'm going to have them trading back in, and I'm going to have them taking McCarthy.
Now, what does this trade look like in your idea?
So, and again, this is not the thing that Denver Bronco fans probably want to hear, having just traded a bunch of first-round picks in the last couple of years. But in order to do this, they're going to have to give up their first-round pick next season, and they're probably going to have to give up a day 2 pick, at least 1 or 2 this season. So to get I think they would probably have to give up their second this year, and they would probably have to give up a first next year at the least.
Okay. The only stripe I have with that is, I just don't think JJ McCarthy is Sean Payton's guy. Like, I don't know. But I get what you're saying. They kind of just, start and build with a young quarterback. But Man, I imagine they really want Bo Nix to try to like point guard the offense. But I like the pick, trading back to the first round.
We'll see.
Yep. All right, so I'm back on the clock with the Jaguars at 17. Jaguars just missed the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence had, a kind of a downer year from the season before when they made the playoffs, but not his worst season, of course, which was his rookie year. So I think what the Jaguars need is just a real like good corner. Like I can't really think off the top of my head that many great corners that are on the Jaguars right now. So I'm gonna go Terran Arnold. Like I think this is a no-brainer almost because he has an athletic build. He's showed range against the SEC that he can guard different great prospects. He had a good game against Malik Neighbors. Luther Burden, he had a decent game on. He's been kind of battle tested, and of course he plays for Alabama, so he's in a great program. So now, why not get a great guy from a great program and insert him into this Jaguars defense? Originally on my notes, I had Nate Wiggins going here, but I just have Terran Arnold higher, so I thought he was going to be already off the board for them. Not here. So with that being said, Pitts, you're back on the clock, Clark, and Bengals. What do you have them doing?
Yes, sir. Clark is back on the clock, and this selection, gotta love the little alliteration there.
Yeah.
So typically a lot of people, if you're just going off of this just knee jerk reaction, oh, you got to protect Joe Burrow, they got to get an offensive line, blah 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 blah. They've made a couple of moves in free agency to try to address that, and I don't think they're going to spend draft capital on that. Nor, they lost their running back in Joe Mixon. You're not going to take a running back in this selection. What I do think they're going to pick, and it's going to be something they don't have, to pair with a couple of pieces they do have. I'm looking at the defensive line, and I'm looking at Jerzon Newton from Illinois here. They have some pass rusher, notably Trey Hendrickson coming off the edge. They've got some decent linebackers with Wilson, a couple secondary pieces, but a big man down low is something I feel like they've lacked really since Geno Atkins was there in the 2010s. So I'm going to have them taking the number one defensive tackle on many's boards, that being Newton out of U of I.
I love it. I think that's a great spot. Jerzon Newton. There's a lot of great guys in this draft. So obviously someone's going to fall. I think he's probably my D tackle one over Byron Murphy. I like him a lot. So it's a great spot, to try to beef up that D line for Joe Burrow to lean back on when he's not on offense. So with me back on the clock, I will say with the Rams, I am mad that you traded up for JJ McCarthy, because this was going to be my surprise pick where I was going to pick JJ McCarthy to try to back up Stafford and then eventually take over the reins for them to have a future option. But you took that away from me. So,
hey man, you never know.
Yeah. Bo Nix, Michael Penix. I feel like I can low key snipe Rattler even in this day 2 or something. So I'm not going to go quarterback here anymore. What I am going to go is a great DB and Nate Wiggins. So before in preseason, the Rams kind of were trending on Twitter a little bit because it was like a challenge going around trying to see if anyone can name any DBs that play for the Rams, because Jalen Ramsey kind of went out of town, and then they don't really have a lot of guys. I personally know Ahkello Witherspoon, but outside of that, they just don't have a lot of like talent in that corner room. So I want to add some talent to that corner room with Nate Wiggins. He ran the fastest defensive 40. I think he ran like a 4.3. He played great coverage in the ACC. In the ACC, and just he was a great corner for Clemson. So that's what I'm gonna do at pick 19. Now back on the clock, Clark. Pick 20. Who do you have the Steelers taking?
Pittsburgh, they seemingly are done quarterback shopping, so we can close the book on that.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, and then the trade, of course, for Fields, which they really aren't giving up too much for. Complete side tangent. I will get to this pick, I promise you, but it's interesting that the Washington Commanders haul for Sam Howell actually seemingly was better than the haul that the Bears got for Fields, and whether that's a reflection of how good they are as players, or whether that's a reflection of just kind of the Bears kind of had no option. Everyone and their grandma knows that what their plan is, so they didn't have much leverage in trading him. I digress. I just thought that was certainly an interesting thing. But for Pittsburgh, again, something we've had a couple of teams like this where they've had some high pick talent in recent years. They seem to have a tight end in Freiermuth. They seem to have a potential wide receiver number one with Pickens. Najee Harris, of course, they picked in the first round a few years ago. Their defense is arguably, a top 3 to 5, top 5 easily, possibly even higher than that defense in the league. So what I have them doing here is taking an offensive lineman, and the offensive lineman that I have them selecting is going to be Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon.
Nice. I like it.
They got some tackles, but a lot of tackles are off the board. This is a guy that isn't, going as much under the radar, but Oregon, a program that has a track record of putting out some good offensive line prospects. So for that reason, I'm picking Powers Johnson.
I love it. And yep, I love the pick. You can always beef up the interior. A lot of pressure, just even as a quarterback, what helps you a lot is when you're able to see the pressure in front of your face and not just coming around the edge. So beefing up that the interior will really help either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. But back on the clock at 21. So I know that the Dolphins are really looking for a receiver. Now, I may scat away from this because I mocked them to get a receiver here, but recent reports have them, trying to get Odell or whatever. And, it's great and all, but why not add more speed to the room? They have A-Chain, they have Raheem Mostert, and then of course Tyreek Hill and Waddle, probably the fastest wide receiver duo. Why not add the guy who broke the 40 record at the combine, and Xavier Worthy in what is probably a reach of a pick, especially over Brian Thomas? But imagine what Mike McDaniel would be able to do with Xavier Worthy on top of Waddle, A-Chain, Tyreek Hill, and also Raheem Mostert in this offense. It's an insane pick. Yes, it's a reach, but I don't think he'll be there day 2 for them to pick. So you might as well get your guy at 21.
No, I agree.
Statement of a pick.
That I certainly wasn't expecting it. You look at the weapons they have, like how much more could they get? But it makes some sense. And a guy like Xavier Worthy, again, is a guy obviously shot up draft boards because of his performance at the combine. And I do think that that's going to get him selected day 1. Some team is going to select this guy. The pure talent is just evident. I mean, it's the fastest 40 recorded in history. Some guys never ran. I'd probably give Tyreek a good chance to eclipse that if he was given the chance.
J-Mo.
Or any of those guys, certainly. But I like it. Maybe not necessarily their biggest need, but I 1,000% could see that happening.
Of course. And
I've
back
got
on the clock, Clark at 22.
Yep, Philadelphia Eagles at number 22. For me, kind of living in the area, I get to hear a lot of Eagles fans, and especially at the end of this season, just the vibes were so low with this team. They came off that Super Bowl berth, and something that plagued them in that Super Bowl loss, and something that plagued them all season was secondary play. I mean, I went to the game in Philly, the Commanders game, week 4. Sam Howell looked incredible in that game. We forced overtime, and then when they came to our place, Sam Howell again, we were lighting them up. And Baker Mayfield in that playoff game was lighting them up. So I'm going to go cornerback here, and the guy that I have them selecting out of the University of Alabama, Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Kool-Aid. Okay.
Obviously an all name game, type of guy, but this is a guy that has been making plays at Alabama for several years on that defense. He was joined by Terrion Arnold in that secondary, who you recently had come off of the board to Jacksonville. But I think that Philly gets a player like McKinstry. He's got some size to him at the cornerback position, and obviously untapped potential, an endurance there from Kool-Aid. Nonetheless, that is where I think I see Philly going, addressing the secondary.
No, I love it. I love them trying to get a secondary, because what they put out on the field last year was literally horrible. That was a terrible secondary that they had, Even I'm a fantasy guy, so I knew to start the quarterback or the wide receiver that was going against the Eagles that week. So, yeah, Kool-Aid hopefully can turn into their number one guy, their shutdown corner of the future. Now, back on the clock with the Chargers, because of the trade of the Vikings at 23. Earlier I talked about like what type of team that Jim Harbaugh wants to try to like mold, and that's like a really tough, hard-nosed team that runs the football, plays great defense, and is just tough in the trenches. So earlier I had them taking Brock Bowers. Now I'm going to switch on to the other side of the field and have them beefing up the interior D-line with Byron Murphy II. Great prospect out of Texas, And overall, they've had kind of their fair share of D-line struggles, with Jerry Tillery being as skinny as CeeDee Lamb, or Linval Joseph kind of at the end of his career not being great. But it really fills a need of flexibility in D-line. He can play off the edge. He can play interior, 1-tech, 3-tech, whatever you need to do. He's very big and physical. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of like a beefier Will Anderson. They kind of play similar. So I think if the Chargers can try to hit on this prospect right here that kind of fell in the draft, I think that would be a great pick for them. Now, back on the clock, Clark, you are picking for the Cowboys. A pick I kind of wanted to pick because I love a certain guy here, but I won't say it. I'm going to let you pick.
Yeah. I've got this team taking Joe Milton. No. As much as I would love to sabotage Dallas's draft, I will do them a solid here and actually pick off of what they need. And with Tyron Smith holding down the left side of that offensive line for as long as he did, and him going to be gone, they need to address that ASAP. And I think the way that you do that is by drafting his replacement. And when I look at the remaining guys available, obviously we've had some talented offensive linemen go off the board, but I think that they go ahead and select Marius Mims from Georgia here at this spot. Mims just based off he's a 6'8", 340-pound tackle, which is exactly the kind of measurables you want in protecting the blind side there for Dak Prescott. And, with such a stud like Smith gone from your team, a guy like Mims is, he's being mocked in the first round a lot. And I think he's, kind of going under the radar a little bit as opposed to some of the other high name kind of offensive tackle prospects. This guy more of a project, but, the physicals are there. His stature is there. And I'll tell you what, the University of Georgia has put out some good players recently. So that's why I think they're going to go Mims at this pick.
I love the pick. I will like to touch before I tell you the guy that I really liked at that spot. They wouldn't have to take a tackle here if they just, paid Tyron Smith. Jerry Jones came out recently saying they couldn't afford it. all they had to do was literally restructure CeeDee Lamb and restructure Dak Prescott, and that opens up $40 million in cap space, along with the cap space that they already have. So that's more than enough to pay Tyron Smith what, $12 million. So what are they doing here? It's kind of like they're asleep at the wheel. The Joneses don't really know what they're doing right now, and they're trying to go quote unquote all in, but they're not really making the necessary moves to fit that statement. Now, what I would have liked them to do is resign Tyron Smith and then draft Brian Thomas, a high upside receiver, to go along and pair with CeeDee Lamb in an explosive offense with Dak Prescott, and then whatever running back you draft later, like Blake Corum or whatever, Jonathan Brooks. And then you have CeeDee Lamb, Brian Thomas, whatever wide receiver 3, like Tolbert or whatever. And then, Cooks, Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 3. And then you get Jake Ferguson at tight end. That's a great weapon core for Dak Prescott to work with. Great offense to try to bounce back from an upsetting season in the first round. But, they couldn't do that. They kind of just fell on their knees and let Tyron Smith walk out the door. So, with that being said, less about the Cowboys' dysfunction, more about this pick 25 with the Packers. And I will be going with Jarrett Verse, a guy who's kind of fell almost too far now. I know in many you're familiar with way too early mock drafts where right after the draft is done, they try to make up a mock draft of what they predict the college season will go, and then who will pick who. Jared Verse was like the 5th pick. Like, he was the clear edge one in this class before this whole season. Kind of had a down year, got exposed a little bit. However, I don't think it's enough for him to fall this far. I think Jared Verse is a great toolsy, traitsy edge rusher. He has high upside. He kind of reminds me of Jadeveon Clowney, but a little bit better. He's great against the run, but I think he can rush the passer as well. The thing that he struggles with is he doesn't really have the pass rushing bag like Latu has. He's more of the Dallas Turner type where he just wins with athleticism. So I like, trying to build a great defensive line, which they already have in Green Bay. Just trying to beef up this defense to go along with what's already kind of a ascending offense with Jordan Love and Jaden Reed and Josh Jacobs now. So I love the pick of Jarrett Verse. Now, Clark, you're back with picks 26 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes, indeed, I am back on the clock. Tampa Bay. Now, this is a team that made the playoffs last year, won a playoff game, much due in part to kind of the air raid offense that they were employing with Baker Mayfield and their receivers, Mike Evans, Godwin, even Cade Otton, the tight end, was playing pretty well in the playoffs for them. One thing that they were not able to do pretty much at all is run the football. Rachaad White, he's just not doing it for me as a running back. But again, I think that also falls back on your offensive line. So the way that I think that they can improve is in the interior of their offensive line. That's why I have them slated to pick the center out of Duke, Graham Barden. He's the number one center on a lot of lists. Yes. And I think getting a guy and not necessarily, you can play this guy even at a guard spot as well, just somebody to get some more interior help for that team. I think that's where they lend. A running back is replaceable. Rachaad White showed some things. I don't know if he's necessarily like an RB1 of the future, but if you want to be able to run the ball, you got to have the guys up front. And I think they get a big body to try to help that.
No, I totally agree with Graham Barton. I think he's a great prospect with Duke. You saw him this year. Especially, I was watching the UNC Duke game. He really stood out to me when I was watching, Riley Leonard try to go to work there. But the thing I do disagree with, I do really like Rachaad White. I think he's a pretty decent running back. I watched him a lot at ASU, And then this year, of course, I'm a fantasy football guy, so obviously, I had him in a lot of drafts. And I thought he played pretty well. It was a pretty solid running back for them, provided a lot of pass catching work as well. So I think, just trying to beef up this O-line will do the trick. Maybe getting another running back later in day 2, day 3 to try to bounce off of Rachaad White would be cool. But I disagree with a lot of people when they say that Rachaad White can't be the number 1 running back. But nonetheless,
We'll
that's
see.
just my opinion. Yeah.
We will see. I mean,
So-
yeah, he's definitely got some talent. Yeah, to ask Tom about him, sure he would have a lot of good things to say. But yeah, nonetheless, we'll see if he can be that bell cow for them.
Speaking of Arizona State running backs, that reminds me, I gotta ask Tom about Xavier Valade, the running that entered last year's draft from ASU. I really liked him, but he kind of didn't pan out. I think he just went to the Texans like as a UDFA. But I digress. I go to pick 27 now with the Cardinals, a trade from the Houston Texans from last year. Here is where you get another weapon for Kyler Murray, and you pick Brian Thomas. I mean, this is like you just run to the podium for this one. Brian Thomas, high upside receiver, probably shouldn't even be on the board at this point, but can pair well with Michael Wilson with the Cardinals, and then also I believe they have Greg.
They
Dortch.
drafted Malik Neighbors as well in this.
Are you serious? No.
Yeah, they drafted Malik
Neighbors.
Neighbors.
I forgot that.
No, I mean, it's possible that they go 2 wide receivers. I mean,
that changes my pick.
That changes your pick?
It's okay.
Okay.
All right, that changes my pick then. I don't know if you can undo picks, which is why I was really specific on not messing up on who I click. But I'm still going to make the graphics and everything. I'm still going to fix it, editing. So that changes my pick a lot. That is my fault for not paying attention to the 4th pick in the draft, of course. But here I'm probably just going to go, probably actually no. I'm going to stick with the pick because even with Malik Neighbors, and then you're still going to have Greg Dortch as your wide receiver 3. Does anyone want that? I know it's a deep wide receiver class, but you can have a real good wide receiver core with Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors both in the same draft class. I know a lot of people may think that may be like a waste of a draft pick, but he's a great prospect. So I think he's fallen too far. So I like him here at 27. Probably stole the pick at 28, but yeah, I'm going to keep him at 27 for now.
Amen. I don't think it's impossible. We've seen teams kind of go that route as well. And if they're truly committed to Kyler Murray, give him some help. Get this guy some weapons. 2 proven guys from LSU would fit in nicely with what I think they're trying to do.
Teammates.
So that takes us to my
it kind of mimics what the Broncos did with Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler almost.
When we all saw how that turned out.
Yeah.
But maybe you never know. I do actually think that Gannon is a pretty underrated coach. I think he definitely overachieved with the roster they had last year. So, sure, let's get Kyler some weapons.
Oh. All right, pick 28. What do you got?
Pick 28, Buffalo Bills. Again, this is the team. Every year, it seems like in the preseason, people are picking them and saying that this year is going to be the year that they can finally break through. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to do that yet. And they made a couple of signings. They brought in Curtis Samuel from my Washington Commanders as a wide receiver. Some thinking maybe they could draft a guy at this spot. I actually think they're going to be drafting a player to replace a different position. That is the secondary. They lost, or rather cut, Tre'Davious White.
Okay.
Big cap casualty there. So I think they try to replace him. and I think that they will look to try to find him in TJ Tampa of Iowa State.
TJ Tampa, okay.
That is the selection I have for Buffalo here. They obviously they lost Gabe Davis in free agency, lost Tre'Davious White, and this guy isn't necessarily going in the first round in every single draft, but to try to replace the long, kind of wiry Tre'Davious White, you got to pick a guy. Tampa is a 6'2" cornerback. There's a lot of potential there. So that's where I have Buffalo selecting.
I love the pick because, I scouted TJ Tampa, and he reminds me a lot of prime Xavier Rhodes, where he's this really tall, lengthy shutdown corner who can be really good on the boundary for you. So not really get taken advantage of by bigger wide receivers. So that being said, I like the pick for the Bills. Of course, they probably would have loved to have Brian Thomas, but he went off the board at 27. The Cardinals unexpectedly probably, but 29.
Unexpected, right. Man.
Yeah. So 29 with the Lions. This is kind of like a crossroads almost, because you can say that they lost a lot of talent in their secondary. They kind of got picked apart in the secondary, but a lot of the good corners are now off the board first round wise. So right now you just want to take advantage of trying to get a real good value for your pick. This could also be a trade back spot. So with that being said, there's different quarterbacks like Boinis, Michael Penix, that a quarterback needy team may want to trade in for. I could entertain a trade back with the Jets almost. For Michael Penix.
Oh,
I don't know though, but that is very interesting.
That's a thought. For sure.
Yeah, that is a real thought, because there's not really Jackson Powers Johnson's off the board, a guy they probably would have really liked. They got two good wide receivers, in my opinion. I'm high on Jameson Williams, so they don't really need another wide receiver. A good third probably been Xavier Worthy, just to give him more speed. But I'm gonna actually have them trading back with the Jets, so I'm gonna write this in my notes. Probably, I would say, I'm not sure what the Jets have. Hold on, let me look just to know their draft capital. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what they have. So looking at their draft capital, they could probably give up their second next year, and probably the 111. No. All right. So their second next year and the 72. So they're 72, pick 72, and then their second next year. I feel like that's a pretty decent pick just to try to move back up into the first round to get your quarterback of the future that's going to ultimately sit behind Aaron Rodgers. But the thing about this is Michael Penix isn't a super young guy, but he's young enough. He's on the rookie contract, and you also get that 5-year extension to try to mold a team around them. The Jets have always been, for the past few years, a team that really has a great house, like I said, around a quarterback. But with Zach Wilson and other quarterbacks, they just never had the quarterback play to support that supporting cast. So trying to keep that around, I feel like Michael Penix would be a great guy to pick here. So, yep. So I'm gonna write it down: 29 for the 72 and 2025 second to the Jets, and they select Michael Penix. So you're back on the clock with the Ravens at 30.
All right, I like it. I like some chaos. I like some unexpectedness. We have two teams trading back into the first round after their pick for quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see if we see that happening. And a guy like Penix is one of the guys that, with the later kind of later first round, day 2-ish tab. So that's entirely possible. My next selection is for the Baltimore Ravens, and their team that is super, super close, making the AFC Championship this year, falling just a little bit short. They drafted a weapon in Zay Flowers last year for Lamar Jackson. I think they're going to draft another weapon this time around. You already drafted your kind of speed, agile guy in Flowers. He's not very tall, but certainly proved to be a dynamic weapon for them. So I think they're going to pair him with maybe a bit of a bigger wide receiver. So there's a couple of options still on the board for them. But the one that stands out to me that has not yet been selected is Adonai Mitchell from Texas. He was not the first Texas wide receiver. Xavier Worthy went off the board, obviously, for his just raw talent. But Mitchell was kind of the wide receiver one for them. And he just seems like an NFL kind of ready guy. And I think he could be a nice compliment on the other side. They're losing Odell Beckham to free agency. So I could see them picking up Mitchell with their late round draft pick here.
And I think that's a real still pick, only because after scouting AD Mitchell, I really liken him to CeeDee Lamb. I think he plays and has a lot of the same movement and route running as CeeDee Lamb, and kind of the same stature almost. He's almost a little bit taller, I'm pretty sure. Isn't he like 6'2" or something? I think CeeDee Lamb's only 6 foot. So
yeah,
this could be a real steal for them, and supplying Lamar with more weapons to try to make another championship push for the Super Bowl. So I like it. I like it a lot. I'm back on the clock now at 31 with my final pick of this draft. And, the 49ers have a lot of holes filled almost. They're kind of a complete team, even now with their quarterback spot, which was a huge gap for them in a hole for a very long time until, of course, Brock Purdy came into play. So now I'm thinking, am I trading Ayuk or not? Because if you're trading Ayuk, this pick would kind of determine what you do here. But in my opinion, I think they should keep Brandon Ayuk. I think he's a great receiver. I think he's their best route runner on the team. I like him a lot more than Deebo Samuel, longevity wise, just because Deebo, he's more of a running back receiver. So because of that, I like let's see. I kind of want to beef up the O-line almost. So I'm going to pick J.C. Latham out of Alabama.
J.C. Latham. Yeah, I mean, definitely could help them, of course. They have a great running attack. They got to it a little bit in the Super Bowl, but, ultimately you're going to run into some teams with some great defensive lines, and particularly, Kansas City with Jones. So who's definitely a factor in the run game. Yeah. So I could totally see them kind of going offensive line here.
Yep.
That takes.
I think it's the only thing that you kind of can do, because I think J.C. Latham can move around, maybe left tackle, right tackle, whatever they kind of need. They have some offensive line help already, but just to add another guy, because what full offensive line stays healthy through the entirety of the year? You at least want to have some type of depth there. So I think pick 31, it will be a great pick for them, especially with a high upside guy in J.C. Latham. Great pick, I think.
Yep, Alabama, man, they know how to get them down there for sure. Any prospect from that school, you not every time, but most of the time, you can trust is going to be an NFL athlete.
Yeah.
So here we are at pick 32. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's just who everybody thought was going to be picking at the beginning of the season, probably at this spot. It's probably the spot they're going to be picking every single year, it seems, at this point. And there's been a lot of chatter, of course, about the receiving core of this team. They brought in Hollywood Brown. They tried to make some signings over the course of the last couple of years, like Juju and Valdez Scantling, but, none have really been able to kind of work, replace that, production that they had from Tyreek Hill, who's obviously unbelievable. So the guy, I do have them picking a wide receiver here. There's a couple of options still on the board. And, I think they would have loved to have Adonai Mitchell, who's a guy that not only is he have some size, he's got a 4.34 speed. That would have been perfect for them, but he goes just before to Baltimore. So I'm going to have them go ahead and select Xavier Leggett from South Carolina with the last pick in the first round here. He's a guy who has some size and, ran a pretty decent 40. And, playing in the SEC, he had Rattler as his quarterback, put up some great numbers, had a great season. So I think they look to get another guy to hopefully build around. And yeah, a lot of these guys they brought in haven't really worked out. Talked about Scantling, talked about Juju, and then of course everybody's favorite Kadarius Toney. Didn't really work out in that role for them. So I see them drafting Leggett to round out the first round.
Yep. And the reason why I let out a big sigh is because I was actually going to make a surprise pick. A lot of Panthers are wise mock drafts and kind of just very bored, or the look up in their YouTube search title, 2-round mock drafts, because they don't get to see who their favorite team gets to pick at pick 33. It's only one more pick. So I figured I'd do that today and take honorary 33rd pick for the Panthers. As a result of the Bryce Young trade last year, they've had a really tough season, but I still believe in Bryce Young, and I think he has a lot of promise. He showed a lot of promise in spurts, but with a bad offensive line and little to no weapons thrown to DJ Chark and old washed Adam Thielen, unfortunately, it hurts me to say. And then also having Chuba Hubbard as his RB1. So it's really grim, but I think they can use this draft to address it. So I was going to pick Xavier Leggett to stay in Carolina at 33, but you took him. So I'm going to probably take my the wide receiver I have right under him, and it's going to be Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. I think he can step into a great, if not wide receiver 1, at least a good wide receiver 2 role, and play not only in the slot but on the boundary. He has great size. He reminds me a lot of how Jerry Jeudy ran routes at Alabama. That's high praise because we all know the great route runner that Jerry Jeudy is. But overall, he's really technically sound with his routes, and I think he has great hands as well. So I think he's a big sleeper. Obviously, Leggett has the big physical traits, which I love more than Ladd McConkey. But overall, just smarts-wise, I think that Ladd McConkey right now is more of a sound route runner for Bryce on the throw to. So, yeah, pick 33 for the Panthers. I'm going to have Ladd McConkey. And that's going to round out our – yep. What do you think of Ladd?
I can tell you what I think of Ladd is that for the past what was it? It seems like the past 3 years, every single time Georgia is playing in one of those New Year's Six bowls or college football playoff, you see the Bill Belichick with the binoculars meme,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I think that could be realistic. I mean, he is a great player. Say what you will. And looking at that team, they're kind of a team that could use everything in the kitchen sink down there in Carolina. So bringing in a new weapon for, your franchise quarterback that you drafted last year, certainly a realistic pick for them.
Yes. And, I try not to give lazy comps. A lot of people like to just comp people to people who they look like. Like, for example, Drake May obviously plays really well, and Justin Herbert's a good comp, but just overall, a lot of people try to just comp people to people who look like each other. So Hunter Renfrow is a comp, or like Cooper Kupp. I try to actually look at his game. I think he plays a lot like how Jerry Jeudy played at Alabama, even though they don't look alike. I mean, I'm just not lazy with the comp, But yeah, that will round out.
Do your homework.
Yeah, Yeah. And that will round out our mock draft 1.0 post combine. I would like to thank Clark for joining us here from the Going Commando podcast and helping us do this first draft. Hopefully, this isn't the last time we see Clark, but overall, this is a successful, in my opinion, mock draft 1.0. So, without ado, I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure you guys leave a sub and a like down below. Also, if you guys want to see more football and basketball opinions or rankings, go look in my in bio. And yeah, guys, make sure you guys like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.